Welcome to the Is It Time for a Lawyer podcast with attorney George Lamb. Each brief episode will focus on a specific legal topic to help you better understand the situation you're in and what your next steps might be. Let's join George for this episode. All right, friends, we are here for the episode 1 version of the podcast with George Lamb. George, welcome, buddy, and congratulations for the launch of the new podcast.
Thank you.
I think today, anytime we launch a podcast, I think it's important to kind of use it as a foundational episode to really just kind of let people know who's on the other end there, who am I listening to. So I thought today we'd just call it Meet George Lamb. So let's start from there if that's okay with you.
It's fine with me. My background did not start in law. It started in business. I have a business degree from the University of Kentucky. It's a Bachelor of Business Administration with a concentration in marketing. I started working in the business world in the international shipping industry many years ago out of college. I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. I worked for a company called Maersk, which is a Danish shipping company. I worked for their trucking group. I started, like I said, in North Carolina. I moved to Cincinnati a couple years after that. I was a terminal manager for their trucking division there for a good amount of years. I decided to go to law school, so I stopped doing that. I was married at the time. I went to law school full time. I ended up back in Louisville, where I'm from. I'm married. I have a couple kids. I have one in college. I have one in high school. So I'm a little bit different than, I would say, your traditional person that's a lawyer because I have a business degree and a business background. So I see things maybe a little bit differently than some people with the more traditional majors that you would see with regard to law school, maybe somebody history or English. So my background is a little different as a lawyer and how I approach things, I think. I have a business mind and I worked in business, but that doesn't mean I necessarily do business law. But what I would say is that it helps me look at situations, analyze situations, and come up with efficient outcomes for people as much as I can.
Well, and I like that perspective because, again, I think a lot of people, when they think about legal, they think about legal bills and, wow, this is going to be expensive, but it doesn't have to be if you've got an attorney who knows his or her craft and wants to get down to business and actually take care of it. I think that's a service actually to the client that a lot of people kind of overlook.
I believe that's true. Different cases, and I do different cases. So I do family court cases, which touches on what you just explained. I do injury cases, and I can go into these. I also do probate cases. I do wills. I kind of have a general practice. Some people would call it a civil practice. I do touch on some criminal matters, depending upon the needs of clients. In the family court context, that would involve child custody cases. That would involve cases with parenting time, visitation, child support. That involves mediation, domestic violence situations, whether it's a EPO, which is an emergency protective order, a DVO, a domestic violence order. It could be an IPO. All those things fall under the umbrella of family law. With regard to the injury cases, I do personal injury cases, which comprise of motor vehicle collisions, work injuries, slip and fall cases, premises liability cases, dog bites, for example. As far as probate cases, that would be opening an estate. You can have somebody that dies intestate, that would be without a will. You could have somebody that passes away testate, that means with a will. There's a similar process for each, but it's different whether or not you die with or without a will. I draft wills for people. I draft powers of attorney for people. And so it's not just one thing that I do. I do have a pretty strong focus in family law. It kind of touches on what you were saying before. I'm accessible. I respect that lawyers are expensive. And I think part of the way I do things, at least with my business background, being a lawyer for 15 years, I try to be efficient with people's money. And I try to be effective, and I'm appreciative of the fact that we are expensive. And I try to be as effective as I can and as efficient as I can while working for people.
Well, that's probably gotten passed down over the years from your father and uncle. In fact, you're part of a family firm at this point, right? A Lamb and Lamb.
That's right.
It's been around for a while.
Been around for a long time. My dad started the law firm with my uncle, I believe in 1982. And then I joined the firm later. We all do some similar things, but we also do things that are, I primarily do the family court cases. We all do personal injury cases. We all do workers' compensation cases. My uncle does Social Security disability cases. His name is Douglas Lamb. My father's name is Eric Lamb. He does first-party contract cases. He does first-party insurance cases. He does contract cases. Not saying that we all can't or don't do those, but we kind of have, I guess you would say, some kind of sub-focuses. I don't really use the word specialty.
Yeah, I know the Bar Association here in Kentucky doesn't let an attorney say I specialize in, but you naturally have an area of focus to your practice. It's where you're comfortable. You know the law. You work in that area, so it's a little bit easier than trying to be a jack of all trades. And I think that's pretty practical for a lot of people.
I think that's true. I think that in any business, it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, it can as far as like legalities and technical matters, but people tend to specialize in or focus on something, and it's based on experience.
Yeah, doctors do it all the time.
Sure. And so that's kind of how it lays out as far as how our firm operates and what we do.
And I would think there might be an opportunity where some of these cases either evolve into other cases or there's a lot of overlap. I could see a workers' comp issue leaning over. It could also be related to a personal injury case. You could have someone who's actually died, but there was part of an accident. Maybe they died in a traffic accident. So you have, again, the probate aspect of it overlapping. Family law, rewriting your personal documents at the end of a divorce settlement.
You could, just like anything in life. I wouldn't say that every legal matter has a domino effect on everything that you do. However, what I would say is that as a practical matter, just like life, circumstances interrelate. And so, sure, you could be in a motor vehicle accident while you're at work. So you would have two things that you need to address at a minimum. You would have a third-party case with regard to the motor vehicle collision, and then you would have a workers' compensation case with respect to your employment. As far as, sure, if you could be going through a divorce while you have a workers' compensation case going on. So by necessity, I don't think any lawyer can just do one thing, because at some point, not saying every time, but it's fairly common that one circumstance can lead to another. Just like you had just said, you could be representing somebody and during the course of the case, they pass away. Well, now you have a probate matter. And so a lot of things, some things are the primary reason why people call us or me. Sometimes it evolves into something else based on a circumstance that has happened during the course of the representation. So you have to be cognizant and you have to be nimble in order to address these people's needs. I mean, because they need to know.
Well, and I think part of the value there is that as these issues evolve, as they come up, you're able to, again, build on the trust that you already have with that client. They don't have to go sit down with a stranger now and bring them up to speed and then try to figure out, okay, have I explained all of this? Well, George already knew this. That kind of gives you some continuity there, and it may make it actually a little bit easier at times for the client to know, hey, we've already got this relationship. You've already got some details. I just need you to vector over and handle this other issue.
Very good point. What I would add is the economics of it. You don't want to pay, and at some point you are paying an attorney. You can pay them by way of a contingency fee. You can pay them by way of an hourly fee, and we can get into that in later episodes. But you don't want to, I wouldn't want to pay somebody to plow the same ground. And so if you have somebody that can be a one-stop shop for some of the things that are coming up, then it makes sense. It's efficient, it's economical, and you already know what rings are on the tree. And so you don't have to go back and try to figure that out, because you were part of a lot of the story from the inception until the new problem happens.
That makes a lot of sense.
Or the new need, or you have a need that is identified that you need to help solve.
Sure. And you're there to do it. Let's talk a little bit, because I know this is a big question for people, especially if they've never hired an attorney in the past. Talk a little bit about your philosophy of working with a client. How do you approach that client relationship? How do you deal with the practice of law as it relates to the person sitting next to you or across the table from you?
Okay. Interestingly, at some point, somebody has decided, is it time for a lawyer? And it could be that they have chosen something, or something has happened to them. They could be, they're driving to work and they're in a motor vehicle collision. They're married and there's a need that they're going to go through a divorce, or they're unmarried and they have a custody issue with they were together and then they're not, or they're not going to be. And so at some point, somebody needs to talk to a lawyer or contact them, or however it is. And so what I try to do is I try to be accessible as I can to folks. I try to be as efficient as I can. And I appreciate the time and the energy that they are spending trying to go through their legal problem, and I want to help them achieve whatever realistic goal there may be based on the circumstances that are presented.
Wow. But I think, as you said from the beginning, you bring a slightly different perspective than maybe some of your colleagues, in the fact that you had a business career ahead of time, and that tendency toward efficiency. It's not a lack of detail, but it's not messing around. It's let's get to it, and let's try to get this resolved. Because people are trying to move through something in their lives. It may have been an automobile accident. It may be a family law issue. They want to, at some point, get a sense of conclusion. And I think with your focus on that, it tends to help. It's got to.
It does. Not only do I have a business degree and I have a law degree, I worked in the competitive world of trucking. And so, you have to be nimble. You have to be able to make decisions very quickly if need be. I will not tell somebody just what they want to hear, even though, I'm an attorney, they're a client. It's not my job to tell somebody what they want to hear every time. And that's not the easiest thing to do, but I'm very honest about it. I'm very upfront about the fact that it is not my job necessarily to tell somebody what they want to hear. But that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate what they're going through. I advise and you pick. And so what I would do is I would say, okay, here's how this lays out. I'll give you advice, but ultimately you're going to make the choice because it's your case. However that lays out, that's in the family court context, that's in the injury context, that's in the work comp context, that's in probate context, it's in a will. I mean, you're picking. And so what I would say is that my prior experience in business, or in the business world, corporate experience, I've been a lawyer for 15 years. My experience as being a lawyer 15 years. I've been married for many years. I have kids. I try to always keep in mind, you can have legal rights, and I think this is very important. You can lay out your legal rights, but usually there's a practical decision that you have to make. And so you may not want to try to get everything that you're entitled to, or maybe you do. And I'm not saying that I would sell anybody short. I'm not saying that I wouldn't try, because of course I would. But you always have to look at the legal perspective and the practical effect of what that is. And I think that I bring that to people, and I talk to people. You're going to talk to me. You're not going to, if I'm the lawyer on your case. Does that mean that some other lawyer in my firm may help? They may, but it's going to be me. You're going to have my cell phone number. You're going to be able to text me. You're going to be able to call me. You can call my office, but you're going to talk to me. And that's one thing that I have to offer that I think separates me from other people.
Interesting take on it. I really like that personal approach, because, again, somebody's going to place trust in you, and it's nice to know that they're going to deal directly with you. And I think that's a bond. I mean, there's definitely a bond there that develops between an attorney and the client. Let's go ahead and conclude the first episode with this. As we launch this journey, as we start this whole podcast concept, what is it you hope to achieve through these podcast episodes? What's the objective?
The objective is to educate people, and that's educate people in and give them explanations about topics of law that I work in, that people come across in their daily lives. Educate them about how these different areas may affect what they do, and educate people about what I can do for them in my capacity as an attorney if they are my client. That's where that would be. I mean, you have different legal issues that touch people every day. And usually it's a tough time. And so what I would communicate is that, generally speaking, I think people need help going through a tough situation to try to get what they want.
No, I love the fact that, breaking it down, because it is complex, especially if you've never hired an attorney before. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation, a lot of armchair quarterbacking from your friends and family, I'm sure. But it's nice that you're going to start laying out, here's how it really happens. Here are things to consider. And we'll use those episodes to really kind of make that understandable so that people can kind of get an idea of your perspective, your mindset. And so when they're ready to make that decision, you're ready to speak with them. So, George, looking forward to this journey, looking forward to all of this with you. It's been a pleasure kind of developing this, kind of going from the idea that, hey, maybe we ought to do something along the lines of a podcast to really kind of laying it out. So I'm excited to let the audience learn about that as this evolves. And we'll be back about every 2 weeks now, launching new episodes. So you'll be able to connect with George on Facebook, on the website. This will be on Spotify. This will be on iHeartRadio and all the other massive platforms out there. But George, I wish you the best of luck, and I look forward to walking down this path with you.
Thank you, Jim.
Take care, guy. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Is It Time for a Lawyer podcast with attorney George Lamb. We hope you found the discussion informative and helpful. The comments George made are not meant to be legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish an attorney-client relationship. However, if it is time for a lawyer, George is ready to listen. Be sure to share this episode on your social media. George will be back in 2 weeks with his next episode. Thanks again for listening.